Okay, so finally in this last one, you can see that Suzanne looks pretty gothic. You know, she's all like backlit and stuff. We can't really see anything. So we're going to get into lighting today, a little bit about three-point lighting. Lighting is something we'll come back and revisit later on, but this is just enough to get us started. So I'm going to hit Escape, and Escape will go back from that render window back to this 3D viewport window. And right now, if I look at it, you can see that Suzanne is sort of this standard gray tone. Um, but that's not necessarily really what I want. Also, she's very, very blocky. So go ahead and click on, whoops. Oh, that's right. I have her locked so that we can't see her. All right, let me unlock Suzanne. I'm going to go ahead and click on Suzanne and pull up your tools shelf if it's not already pulled up. And we're going to change the shading from flat, which is what it is now, to smooth. And now you can see it looks all nice and smoothed out. And I'm going to do the same thing with the cone. The cone looks a little strange, so I'm going to double check that it's not a negative scale. No, it's fine. It's probably just a weird lighting thing. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and just grab everything. So I'm going to box select and just set everything to smooth. So you can also toggle things back to flat if you want, but for our purposes, that smooth setting will just add a little bit of an extra quality, and we don't have to change a lot to get that good looking quality. Now, the next thing we need to do is reposition this light and also add some other lights. But we can't really see what that light is doing right now in this scene. So down here, there's this little circle. Let me actually move this up. And if I change this, it's showing me solid, and if I go to texture, it basically gives me an overview of what the light's doing. Again, this is not quite the same as what a rendered image is doing. If I render it, you can see it's a little bit different, but it's pretty close to it. The other thing I can do is actually just jump ahead to rendered, and it shows me a truly rendered view. The problem is I can't reposition anything. This just shows me a rendered view. I can't really do anything else. And then there's material, which in this case is very similar to textured. So I'm just going to use textured. It uses less memory, but it'll give me a pretty good idea of what the lights are doing. All right, so this is basically functioning as what we'd call a backlight, and that's okay. I could just keep it, but when you light things, you want to use three-point lighting, and that's the key light, the fill light, and the backlight. So if I go to my top view, I want to set my key light basically to the opposite side of my camera. So my camera's over here, my key light's over here, and this is going to be our brightest light, and it's usually about this 45 degrees up from the eye line or so. So if I go to my front view, I can move this up a little bit. Again, I'll check that it's sort of at a nice little angle, and this is my brightest light. So I'll just leave this as it is. I won't really change anything. Now my next light, I really want it to be on the opposite side, a little bit lower, and also in front of Suzanne. Let me check my side view, make sure that looks pretty good. Okay. And I'm positioning my 3D cursor, and then I'm going to add a new light. So I'll do Shift A. And down here under lamps, you can see that we have a whole bunch of different lights. So this first one is a point light, the default one. I'm going to go ahead and use, let's do a Hemi light. So if you've had lighting, you'll understand how these different lights work, and we'll get into them a little bit more later on. But for now, I want to make sure that this Hemi light is pointed at Suzanne. So I need to rotate this. So I'm just hitting R to rotate. I'll go to my top view, R to rotate again. And right now, this is much too bright. So if I go to my rendered view, I can see she's pretty blown out, basically. So I want to make this a little bit more subtle. If I go to my properties panel and I have that Hemi light selected, you can see that there's a light here, this tab, I clicked through that pretty quickly, I'm sorry, that says Hemi. So if I click on this other lamp, it shows me, okay, it's just a lamp. If I click on this Hemi, it shows me that, and it's the brightest light. So to turn down the brightness of this light, all I need to do is click on the energy. And this might be a time to go to the rendered view. So even though I can't move these objects around, I can click on the energy. So what I really want to do is have some molded shadows. So I'll pull this up gradually. Oh, that wasn't very gradual, was it? So that I have some nice molded shadows. The rule of thumb is that you want to have just 1 or 2 points of a bright white light, or actually none at all. If you can have a light that's almost bright white, so I can click on these incrementally to bring up that light. That looks pretty good. Then that's your best bet for your lights. If I want to try to control the other lamp while I'm in the rendered view, I can click on lamp, and I can actually bring up the energy on that lamp a little bit. It can go above 1. So now I have some bright highlights. I don't want to blow it out, but I do want it to be a little bit brighter. Then I'll go back to that Hemi, and actually I'm going to turn this down a little bit, because you also want to preserve some darks. So you want to have like at least one dark point somewhere. So you can see the very edge of her ear. There's a nice little dark shadow right there. This is getting kind of flattened out right over there. So I am going to change this. You can also change the type of light it is at any given point in time. So I could just toggle through and see what other results these lights give me. You know, point light actually looks pretty good, as does the sun. But I'll go back to this Hemi. I'm just going to pull this down quite a bit further. Just want to illuminate it a little bit. All right, so there's that. And then I'll go back to my solid view. And finally, I'm going to add a backlight. Sometimes a backlight is called a hair light. There's other names for it. Depends on what purpose it's serving. But usually it's a little bit above your form. And often if you have a backdrop, it's actually shining at the backdrop. Other times it can sort of shoot behind your object and sort of form like a halo if there's hair or something. We don't have hair in here, so we're not going to worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and make another lamp. I'm just going to make a point light. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my rendered view. Go to 0. Actually, I'll go to my front view. And you can see that rendered light added a little bit of a highlight to it. So if I turn off the rendering and the visibility, we can see the difference between not having that backlight and having that backlight. It just molds that form quite a bit more. I'm not super crazy about that hot highlight, so I might go through and just try a couple different lights to see, woo, that's too much, see what I'm going to get. You know what, I'll live with it. I will, however, move it down a little bit. So I'm going to go back to solid. I'm going to move it down just a little bit. Whoops. Oh, I can't do it because I turned it off. Okay, let me move this guy down a little bit. And then I'll go back to my rendered view. Now, if you're already like, well, Heather, why don't you just split the screen? Brilliant. That is a really good idea. So if I split the screen, and I don't need these shelves anymore, and I set, say, this one to be my rendered view, maybe at the camera angle, and if I set this one to be solid, this is a really good way of repositioning these lights and then seeing the final result of that. So this looks pretty good. See how flat and gray this is getting in here in the middle of this though? I gotta keep working on that fill light. So I'm gonna go back to that Hemi, and I think I will change this. There we go, that's actually better. Let's go to the point light. I'll make this a little bit brighter. Just a little bit. I'll go back to my other point, and then I'll go back to that backlight. Let me see if I can find it. We'll get into naming objects a little bit later on. And actually, I'm going to move it up a little bit. There we go. So now we have some shadows here that are molded. Yours is going to look different than mine, but the basic layout is the same. So if we're in the top view, it sort of forms a triangle around your form. And in the side view, you can see it forms another triangle. This is basic 3-point lighting. We'll get into the nuances of this a little bit more later on. But once you have this, go ahead and save Suzanne. And then we're going to render this out again. Again, make sure this is set to 100%. Go ahead and render it. There's our lovely Suzanne. And then you're going to save this as an image. And then Suzanne lighting, just to keep them distinct. and then go ahead and upload this new Ping file to Canvas.